What is that?
Well, I mean, the problem here, you have to understand, is that although the British people voted to leave the European Union, we have a Parliament and a political class and a Prime Minister that doesn't want to leave. If you were going to leave the European Union, you would not have gone through the process that they've gone through for the last 2.5 years, which has basically been an elaborate charade to end up where we are now. Yeah. If you want to leave the European Union, you don't ask the European Union how you can do it, because you're not going to get a constructive answer. Why would you? Because they don't want us to leave. If a British government really wanted to leave, they would have repealed the 1972 European Communities Act as a first step immediately after the referendum. They would have then said to the European Union, don't panic, because all EU law remains in place, but we are now going to start an amending and repealing that law in a spirit of friendship and cooperation, but in accordance with our priorities and our timescales. That's the only way Britain will ever leave the European Union. What you've got now is a situation where I was surprised yesterday, actually, that Parliament voted against this delay, because that's really what they want to do, is to delay and impede the whole process. But now they've said, OK, we're not going to ask for an extension to Article 50, but we're sending Mrs May back to see the Commission, who've already said that they are not going to renegotiate.
OK, if the choice were to crash out or to remove the backstop or negotiate the Irish backstop, which would it be for the EU? It seems now the idea is better to have a no deal. What do you think?
Well, this is not the choices. I mean, the no deal, I think, would be the worst for everyone. But what we are saying, we want to respect the people of Great Britain decision. Come with an alternative. Tell us what you want, but not wishful thinking. Give us a plan. The ball is in London. Well, I mean, give us a plan for a negotiated solution.
They are clear. The British Parliament has said.
They said just an alternative arrangement. They didn't say what it is. And, you know, we have less than 2 months.
Well,
Gerard,
they didn't say what it is.
Jump in, Gerard.
I probably must be about the only British politician that's actually got a plan. And I've been talking about it for the last few years before we even had the referendum. All of this has been this whole thing has been conducted on completely false premise. This idea of crashing out and jumping off a cliff and leaving without a plan. These are all words that are designed to influence how people think. It's nothing like that at all. We are a member of this thing on the basis of treaties. Treaties have no force in law. Britain can pull out, I think something like 52 treaties have been resiled from since 1988 in Britain. It is a treaty. All we have to do is say that we're leaving, explain to the EU how we're going to do it, and we could have, for example, immediately after the referendum, have offered you continued tariff-free trade or WTO terms and said,
do you believe in international law?
This is completely
it's not international law.
This
you don't understand. A treaty is not law.
A treaty is a voluntary agreement.
Exactly. It is a voluntary agreement
to negotiate how to get out of it.
And in our case, the monarch is the head of the constitution. It is agreement between the Crown and other governments. And a treaty can be withdrawn from at any point under our law. Because
the only
thing that makes it legal in the UK is the 1972 European Communities Act. Once that's repealed, none of it has any force, except those bits we've allowed into law over the years, which is now many thousands, and we will have to dismantle that going forward over time.
And then you think that Europe's going to be terribly trustworthy when it comes to a future trade relationship? Because I assume you would still want to trade with the European Union, wouldn't you?
Trade goes on between countries, peoples and companies. It doesn't go on between governments. And Britain's been a world trading...
Governments
and quite often they impede it as well.
You know, the people of Great Britain are the ones that are going to suffer more about no deal if it happens.
The European Union sells Britain far more than we sell them. The bulk of our profitable trade is with the rest of the world. We want to continue trading with you.
What do you do with the Good Friday agreement?
Why does the British government then continually insist, and the Treasury saying that, and cabinet ministers, Brexiteer cabinet ministers, say that what the country does not need is no deal?
I'll tell you the short answer, because most of them are Remainers.
Very quick answer.
Very quickly. We've had two Brexit negotiators, David Davis and Dominic Raab, who've had to resign from their positions because they know the government and Mrs May and the civil service are not sincere about leaving.
By the way, I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it safely. Thank you.
Yes. For point of order, Mr. Peter Bone.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry I haven't given you notice because it was not possible. Since the Prime Minister's questions has begun, the President of the European Council has said that there is a special place in hell reserved for Brexiteers.
Lovely.
I don't recall, sir, any president insulting members of this House, members of the government and the British people in such a way. What means is open to the House or the government to respond to such a completely outrageous insult?
Well, I'm not responsible for the statements of the President of the European Council, and I didn't know, I was not hitherto conscious that the Honourable Gentleman, the member for Wellingborough, was notably sensitive, that he was in any sense a delicate flower, that he was capable of being a quickly and severely injured soul by virtue of the ad hominem remarks of others. If in fact it is the case that he's been developing a sensitivity and he feels insulted, or even as the Right Honourable Gentleman Member for New Forest East jumps from a century position, wounded, then deeply wounded apparently, well then I'm sorry for the Honourable Gentleman. Whatever views the Honourable Gentleman has and expresses, as far as I'm concerned, as he knows, I hold him in the highest esteem because he takes Parliament seriously. Always has done, does and always will do. It's not for the Speaker to arbitrate between different political opinions. What the Speaker likes to see and hear is the sight and sound of committed parliamentarians who take their responsibilities seriously. No one does so more obviously than the Honourable Gentleman.
Do you think the Brexiteers have gone soft in the Malthouse Compromise, and should we be more hardline in what we call for? The Malthouse Compromise is one that would ensure free trade and no hard border in Ireland. It would also mean that we had a lengthened implementation period, that we would pay out the money, but that we would have left the European Union. We would be in charge of our own affairs. We wouldn't divide up the United Kingdom, and we wouldn't be potentially in a customs union indefinitely. That's the basis of the Malthouse Compromise, with a fallback if the EU were to refuse the replacement of the current backstop, of basically buying a standstill implementation period, making our current contributions up until the end of 2021 and allowing us time to negotiate a future relationship of an unspecified kind, something that we could discuss in that period, or move to the rules under the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, where we wouldn't need to change anything potentially for up to 10 years, again giving time to make things happen more smoothly. Now, I'm one of the Brexiteers who's been willing to go along with that. I've been working with Kit Malthouse and Steve Baker, Nicky Morgan, Robert Buckland and Stephen Hammond to try and work out if there is a way forward that can unite the country and get a deal that everybody can live with. And inevitably, this means a bit of give and take on either side. And I'm coming round to the view that if we pay the money but are out of the European Union, that is money worth paying. But we have to be clearly out of the European Union, and we have to be out on the 29th of March. We can't delay the date of departure because, to my mind, that is essentially a way of stopping us leaving altogether. And it's not to say if a bill needed to get through Parliament, you might not be able to hold on for a day or two, but that essentially the agreement has to be done and dusted, and you have to be out, and that's worth, as I say, giving some money for. Now,
Bean Wayand, who is Michel Barnier's number 2, says fact-checking alternative arrangements, RE #Brexit backstop. Can technology solve the Irish border problem? Short answer, not in the next few years.
Well, I mean, look, the plan that's been put together by the group, and it's not just me, right? Some serious people from both sides came together in a good-hearted and civilised relationship to try and find a way forward. Effectively offers the EU 2 options. Right, so it offers Plan A, which says we want a new basis for the backstop that is not based on a customs area, but is based on a free trade agreement. And
where's the compromise on that?
Hold on. Particular protocols around the border, and also extending the implementation period by 12 months to give us lots of time to avoid going to the backstop. But if, and Sabine Wayand naturally will react first off, like that. The Plan B is important.
She's going to change her
Plan
mind.
B addresses the concerns of those people who are worried about no deal, in that it effectively uses money to buy a standstill period to allow us to sort out our differences in more
All right, I'm
time.
going to stop you right there on that point, because that's an important point, which is the second part of the plan. So you want to buy a transition phase for up to 3 years, to the end of 2021, even without a withdrawal agreement if one cannot be reached. Why would the EU do that?
Well,
They've said no withdrawal agreement, no transition without a withdrawal agreement, and no backstop.
So it's very easy for us to internalise the position of the EU and guess what they want, right?
No, they've been very clear.
What the EU have said to us repeatedly, is show us what you want. Barnier said it again and again and again, show us what you want. So we're now putting together a package of what we think will garner agreement across the House. The Prime Minister will have a number of options that she can take forward. Now, I am encouraged. Just this morning, Angela Merkel has said that people should be imaginative and talk to each other.
The Sunday Telegraph, the Prime Minister has written an article. She is going to battle for Britain in Brussels. Oh, and we are leaving on March the 29th. So far so good, I thought. But then I see the front page of the Sunday Times, and reported in other newspapers too. There's a Brexit plan, in case of a no-deal Brexit, to evacuate the Queen from Buckingham Palace. All of this, I am certain, is being put out by those close to and around the government, because even though they say no deal's better than a bad deal, they've never at any point ever meant it, and any cabinet minister that breaks ranks doesn't get disciplined. I mean, just think about this. You know, when we thought the country was going to be invaded in 1940, and during the 6 months of bombing every night known as the Blitz, the King and Queen stayed in Buckingham Palace. But if some tariffs were to get put on motor cars, the royal family may have to leave Buck House. I mean, it's just nonsense. But more significantly is the other story that really will leave you confused, and that's sort of led by the Mail on Sunday, but picked up by others, is that the plan is, if she can't get any give in Brussels, we'll extend Article 50, she'll then put to the country a new deal in a general election to be held on the 6th of June, which would also be, of course, the 75th anniversary of D-Day. So on the one hand, we're battling for Britain, we're leaving on March the 29th, there's no question about it, and on the other, huge plans being made to fight a general election. Esther, you got behind the Prime Minister last Tuesday in that vote, and she's going back to Brussels and going to try and bin the backstop and to try to make this withdrawal agreement a little bit more acceptable. I wonder, when you saw the pictures of Mr Juncker, Mr Barnier, Mr Verhofstadt, did you think their response was what you expected, or do you really think there's a chance we can negotiate something here?
Well, I guess negotiations, as we always knew, were going to go on to the very last moment. They have to stand their line for a little bit longer. They might have actually been taken aback that the Conservatives, the Brexiteers, actually all came together to give the Prime Minister the strength to go back. As a united force, she said, OK, tell me what you want, not what you don't want. They all came together and said, actually, it's to go back, get rid of the backstop that supposedly the EU don't want, we don't want, nobody wants, let's get rid of it, and give her that ability to do that and open up the withdrawal agreement. So they stuck to what they were always saying, no give, inflexibility. Didn't work for them, really, because it's that attitude, that intransigence, actually, that has possibly started some of the EU countries sort of peeling away. You've seen a little bit of movement there, say from Poland and others.
Particularly,
but actually, in the UK, people are not liking the way we're being spoken to. And interestingly, as an MP who gets letters all the time from constituents, people who voted Remain said, gosh, we didn't think it was like that. We never thought the political, as it were, experiment of the EU was worth more, actually, than the people and the citizens. And Remainers have moved quite a lot across to wanting to leave, because at the end of the day, they're also Democrats. They believe in the vote, the democratic vote of the people, and have not liked this intransigent of sort of the Commission.
But there is a slight problem here, isn't there? Your party leader, our Prime Minister, she was the one that signed up to the backstop. She was the one that tried to sell the backstop as a concept. She was the one who put it to Parliament for a vote, and it got rejected. And so, having signed up for this, having said this is the only deal available, now that very same person is going back to Brussels and saying, well, I think perhaps we got that ever so slightly wrong. I mean, there's really, let's be honest about this, we might get an attached form of legal words about the backstop never intending to be used or whatever it is, but isn't the truth of it that they're not going to get rid of the backstop?
Well, we've got to see about that first. You've got to get rid of it, you know, whether it's a unilateral withdrawal, whether it's a time limited, or whether it's, for me, a removal of straight away. As you said, that's why I stood down. I remember that cabinet meeting when I said this deal, this withdrawal agreement, will not be accepted, particularly not by Brexiteers, but also it won't be accepted by Remainers as well. They will not like it. I was told I didn't know what I was talking about. It would. This is what they were going forward with. I said the backstop is absolutely non-negotiable. So too was £39 billion being handed over with that free trade agreement, but they continued forward. I said in November the 15th, you should have your Salzburg moment now. You should say absolutely not acceptable, this will not pass. Anyway, like I said, they didn't think I knew what I was talking about, and then it went down to the biggest defeat in history, 230 MPs saying we cannot accept this. So you're right, the Prime Minister has always stuck by that deal, whether you think that's advice, close advice, you know, Ollie Robbins, some of her negotiating team. But now that she's realised it isn't possible, now that she's realised her party cannot get behind her, she has done the right thing and said, I will go back and renegotiate. To me, she should have said that a while ago, but I can't criticise somebody eventually coming to that decision.
But it was a mistake in the first place, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely it was. How could you break up the union? Worse than that, how can you break up the union? I mean, for me, a unionist, you cannot do that. But when also your supply partners are the DUP, and then you fundamentally break the contract you've got with them, which means we cannot govern as a party, which means it's a surefire way to end up in an election because you don't have a governing party. It did not make sense.
Doesn't sound to me like you're on Theresa May's Christmas card list anymore.
I was on the last year's one.
Were you?
But to be fair, I'm quite sure there were thousands that went out, but I like to think there was on that. But look, we've got to do what is right. Not if, you know, I'm not currying favour. I don't care if I'm on a Christmas card list or not. I mean, I gave up my job because I believed in what was right for the UK and what 17.5 million people voted for, and we are a democracy. So that's what I stand up for, and I might get 17.5 million Christmas cards instead of that one.